this opportunity?
Yeah, sure. So, there's a lot of faces in the room that I don't recognize and a few that I do. So as a quick intro, for those of you who have not been following along with this effort, we've been running for about a year, a little over. We're basically, this came out of some discussions with the technical committee for OpenStack, where they were trying to figure out ways to get the foundation member organizations in particular, those that pay membership dues into the OpenInfra Foundation, trying to see if they could get their employees more involved in the development and maintenance of OpenStack itself. We're, I wouldn't say necessarily at a crisis point, but we definitely are in dire need of help with particularly certain aspects of OpenStack maintenance. So we want to try to get new people into the project, particularly to help bolster the losses of people who move on to other projects or change careers, etc. So to that end, the business development folks at the foundation have been asking representatives of member organizations, when they talk to them, what problems their employees may have encountered in trying to get changes merged into OpenStack projects. And we started digging into the specific examples that were provided. Then we spun up a very small focus group of people that we deemed to be successful contributors within the OpenStack community, to try to get a better understanding of what it is that makes them successful at helping develop and maintain OpenStack. And then out of that came some broader community discussions. We ran some sessions at prior summits and OpenInfra days in some locations, PPG sessions and so on, try to continue to build up this body of knowledge, hopefully culminating in a set of recommendations, not only for how the maintainers of projects can make things a little more easy and more welcoming to people trying to contribute, but also recommendations for how new contributors to the community can ease the burden on the maintainers in order to help smooth the contribution process overall. So that kind of brings us up to today. And we thought that depending on the breakdown of the audience we had for this session, this is a forum session, so it's aiming for some active discussion amongst those of you in the audience. We thought that we could either try to dig into some of the specific action items and recommendations, or we can go over some of the surveys that we ran as part of this. We've got a developer maintainer survey and a contributor survey that we've been encouraging people involved in the OpenStack community to take. We wrapped up the Flamingo cycle recently with the 2025.2 coordinated release of OpenStack, and so we are now starting a Flamingo cycle retrospective survey round for maintainers and for people who contributed changes to try to figure out ways that that they have engaged in those projects. We've added some new questions since the Epoxy cycle retrospective survey around prioritization of changes. One of the things that was brought up in the Epoxy review was that a lot of people who don't contribute regularly within the scope of a particular team have a hard time understanding how that team prioritizes what they're reviewing and when they merge things. And so trying to figure out ways that we can help teams better expose that information in their contributor documentation and so on. So we've got some survey questions added around that now, just to get a better understanding of how teams are doing prioritization and whether or not contributors in particular OpenStack sub-projects are finding the documentation that helps them understand those prioritization workflows.
So I guess I've been just thinking, how many folks in the room are already contributing to, say, OpenStack? And how many of you have taken the survey? So like a third maybe? Thank you.
Bravo to those of you who have taken it.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess we would encourage folks to take that. Are there any maintainers of projects in here?
I see a few.
Yeah. How about, is anyone a new contributor? Is anyone kind of contributed a patch and so we've got a few folks as well. So we've had a
Or
fairly,
push something to Garrett that maybe hasn't merged yet, anything like that.
so a fairly kind of mixed group in the room, which I guess is good because we can kind of get feedback from different portions of kind of.
We can even just turn you at each other and step back and watch this unfold.
So I guess a few of you have taken the survey. I think getting that done is a good way for us to kind of track progress over this over time to kind of see, are we improving things, are things getting worse? And for a long time there was just not a lot of insight into that, and I think what we're trying to establish now is just a more formal way of keeping track and tabs on that so that we can hopefully improve over time, make the experience better.
After the epoxy cycle, the surveys that we ran, I think we had 10 OpenStack teams that we got more than one survey response for. So I followed up with them in their team meetings at various points to kind of give them sort of our review of the team-specific outcomes from those survey responses, whether they were maintainer surveys or contributor surveys or a mix of the two. And also to kind of follow up with them on any discussions that they were having with their team about ways that they wanted to try to maybe make adjustments to address some of the items that were raised, or whether there were things that they were excelling at as a team that they might be able to explain more broadly to the OpenStack community so that other teams can share in those sorts of improvements.
Do we want to start asking people for feedback? I know
Yeah,
in
sure.
here we've got, asking people to share highlights, things that they, sure, go ahead for it.
I want to state something because I don't feel meant by if you have participated in the release as a project contributor, even though I had patches up that did not get merged. And in my special case, they did not get merged for years. And so I feel like I'm maybe a little bit left out, but maybe that's not just me.
No.
Maybe those are many people who tried to contribute, but it didn't work.
Right.
And maybe it would be good to also know why that didn't work.
Right.
Yes,
We
exactly.
want to know that. We want you to take the survey. We want anyone in that situation to take the survey. The outreach that we did to try to directly prompt people to take the survey after the release was to people who had patches that merged because they were the easiest ones to identify. Because I'm already generating contributor stats for the release, and I've got a list of, these are the email addresses, or at least the primary addresses in Garrett, for all the people whose patches landed, so let's see if we can get some of them to fill out the survey. But yes, we want to hear from really anyone in the community who is helping maintain a project or trying to contribute to a project, whether successful or not. And similarly, I generated a list of active maintainers to do outreach to, but if there are other people who are maintainers on some of those teams who maybe weren't active in the Flamingo cycle, still understanding their views on those surveys would be useful. They just were not in the list of addresses I had on hand to try to prompt people with. But I also sent emails to the OpenStack Discuss mailing list, just trying to generally encourage anyone to take the surveys. And yes, to your point, the image encryption pop-up team changes are one of the primary examples for me of some of the communication breakdown that leads to situations where changes don't get merged. They're an excellent example of the sort of thing we're trying to address. And they are very quick surveys, ideally, depending on, because they're not translated, they're all in English, so depending on how fast you read English, they might be very quick or take a little bit, but they're just a handful of multiple choice questions.
I guess since we've got people in the room, I'm just curious to, you know, hear if there are any, like it says here, highlights. Are there any particular experiences, feedback that you'd like to share? You know, whether or not you have submitted to the survey, that's a great way to get it in, but I think since we're here, we can start collecting that if you're comfortable sharing it in this sort of venue. Yeah.
So the weekly meetings, you know, we kind of try to bring in, you know, our, so basically, you know, you have your own priorities to submit things, and then, you know, we try to bring that priority to the IRC meeting that we have on a weekly basis. But I keep seeing that, you know, they get ignored. We've tried, you know, using the Etherpad where, you know, things are prioritized based on, you know, the reviews, etc. But, you know, getting that +2 or basically the workflow +2 is very, very hard. And I don't know how to bring that to notice, because some of these patches actually kind of, you know, require attention, because there are customers who are waiting for that kind of a patch. Though the customers are patient because they know that this is an open source kind of a thing, and there is actually a turnaround time, but still, you know, sometimes, you know, the changes are so important that they need to be merged on time. And you know, for instance, I had a couple of patches which, you know, were supposed to go in Flamingo, but, you know, now I have to backport them and they are still not merged. And they are important because, you know, the customers are actually waiting for those, and there are backporting that they are waiting for instance. So these are the kind of problems that we face, and in, you know, weekly meetings we don't see that kind of traction that we expect for prioritizations of such patches. Maybe, you know, the idea is to get more involved in other patches so that you get more traction on your patches. That is something that we are going to now try, but that is something that we are trying to, you know, understand. How do we, you know, bring these things up to the community's attention?
That is definitely one of the suggestions that maintainers that we've talked to have had is getting more involved in reviewing other changes that aren't your own to kind of help ease their burden, also help raise your profile a little bit within that team. You know, they likely have a little bit more inclination to take a look at patches that are coming from people who are helping to make their jobs a little easier. But the thing that was an eye-opener for me in a lot of the early discussions we had about this was that it's not just the contributors who are struggling to get any changes merged that see these problems, but even the maintainers of these projects, in many cases, have trouble just getting their colleagues and compatriots on their own core review teams to review the changes that they've proposed to. And, you know, I mean, I can speak from past experience when I was maintaining OpenStack projects, even as a PTL, like there were definitely changes I had outstanding, and some of them are still waiting for review from core review teams years later. So it's not a problem that only the people who are not successful in getting their changes merged are experiencing. It's a problem that people who are helping maintain the projects are experiencing as well.
As far as priorities go, I know the Nova project maintains a specific priorities document, and so just in general, that's a good place to go look and understand, you know, why are things being ignored? Well, is it on that list? If it's not, that's potentially the reason why, right, is they're focused on this specific set of things. And so I'm not a Nova contributor, but I would assume that kind of the process in that particular project of getting things kind of looked at is to get on that priority list.
I guess the question is, are you, like in your case where you got like a patch that you submitted 2 years ago, has it even been acknowledged that it exists?
Oh,
Like this in the system?
my problem is a little bit special because I have a cross-project feature involving Nova, Cinna, and Glance, and so getting them all work together is the hard part.
That's what I'm doing here.
That's
I've touched Barbican as well, actually.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, how much of it is, you know, a willful decision of assigned priority versus we have so many outstanding things here that it overruns your brain and they don't even look that far down the list anymore.
Yeah, And in a lot of cases, it's the teams don't have enough maintainers, and helping increase the maintainer count, core review team sizes could help if they can find people who have the bandwidth and ability to become maintainers of those teams.
I need a PTG day or a meeting day that is dedicated to cleaning out the trash, so that you can get down to things that are still relevant. If you've got things that are sitting in there that are 4 releases old, that haven't even been looked at, are they even relevant anymore?
Right.
Right? And then you can like get the file down to something manageable and start like at least taking a glance at everything briefly to see whether it's, you know, to
Yeah.
properly assign priority versus not even analyzing it at all.
Well, and another aspect of that problem is that some teams do track priorities but then don't follow them. Because it's still an awful like herding cats, and the PTL may try to like collect information from the maintainers of that service or whatever, like as to what their focus is going to be for that cycle, and try to get that recorded in the cycle priorities. But one person's priority may not be another person's priority, and they may not be able to actually get those things that they're working on even reviewed. Like I was saying, as a maintainer, they may still struggle to find reviewers. So like trying to find ways that we can get our review teams more in sync prioritization wise could help, beyond just trying to document priorities and then not following them, which is not really going to help anyone. Yeah.
I would say I have the other experience that like in Ironic it works quite well. We have like a hashtag Ironic Week Prio, and like every Monday there's a meeting, so like we like say, hey guys, if you can review here, there's like a link to this hashtag, and also like if you whenever you go to the contributor page, like there is a link to the patches that are on the priority list. So like that can work, but as like every week it needs to be reiterated, otherwise
Right. And
the list grows, and that's what you probably don't.
yeah, we saw evidence in the surveys. Granted, there weren't that many. The survey feedback for Ironic, and also the metrics analysis that we did for the epoxy cycle, that indicated that the approaches that you were taking were making a difference compared to what was occurring in some other teams. And so like being able to distill your process, and if you've got it documented already, that's a big step in that direction. But to be able to share that process with other OpenStack teams and be able to say, hey, look, this is what we're doing and it's working great, and at this point we've got at least some anecdotal evidence from a handful of surveys, but also some evidence from the contributor metrics for Ironic that suggests that this is working. If anyone else wants to give it a try, then maybe on the next round of surveys, the next round of metrics analyses, we'll see incremental changes in the results for those teams as well.
Yeah, but I think what will Ironic have different is they have loads of cores. Like,
Yes. Well,
so,
and again, like, I was talking to Jay about that yesterday I think, where he was saying, yeah, just basically the biggest impact that we made in Ironic was by collectively coming to the understanding that it was okay to promote some contributors to core reviewer status, even if they maybe weren't 100% there yet. Like being comfortable with having some people who were still in the process of learning what it was to be a maintainer helped elevate them more quickly and help grow that maintainer team versus being risk averse and trying to avoid giving approval permissions to anyone until you were absolutely certain that they weren't ever going to make a mistake, because we all make mistakes. So
yeah, I think they recently introduced like 2 steps.
Yeah.
Like that you like at the middle step you can do +2s, but you cannot do workflow.
right, yeah,
So you can like trigger like actual merging, but you can say like, yeah, this changes.
right, and that happened late in the epoxy cycle, I think, for Ironic. So I'm kind of curious to see what the impact then is on so it was late in the Flamingo cycle that change went in. So like comparing what we got from epoxy to what we're going to see on the survey results and the metrics analyses for Flamingo retrospective, for Ironic in particular, I'm hoping that we'll see that helps improve things. We might find that it didn't, or you may have like anecdotal experience that conflicts with what we're getting from the actual numbers and trying to work out, like, are we not measuring the right things? I mean, that's always a possibility, and something that we try to look closely at in this process is making sure that we're not going completely off the rails. Part of why we want to have you folks in the room and in the discussions on the mailing list while we're trying to work through this process, because it's going to be a long road, but I'm hoping that it's going to lead us in the right direction.
Well, another thing that for me doesn't work well is that I'm occasionally reporting bugs that we encounter, and it's every time with another project, and every project has its own way to get it reviewed, right? And it's probably somewhere in the docs, but not always. So it would be nice to have it somewhere that's either the same for every project, or for example on the review in Garrett somewhere for that project, like do these steps and then you will get some attention, or
Right.
Or have some automatic reviewer assignments, maybe based on prior activity in particular directories.
Yep.
Because finding someone who knows about a particular part of a project is difficult.
Yeah.
You may just have a list of maintainers,
So
and
that-
you don't know who's the right person.
Yeah, there is a plugin
There
here
is, and
that can do that.
there
but-
was discussion about it in the Garrett user meetup or whatever we're calling it this weekend. It works well as long as the reviewers are still active. Like it becomes problematic because there's not really any input into that system to know when someone has gone to a new job or has retired or what have you. And you have to be careful that you don't just kind of bit bucket changes by assigning them to someone who's never going to show up again. But that is potentially, like, there are workarounds to that, and the discussion there was around how they're trying to improve that particular issue with using that approach. And so it's not that it's impossible, it's something to be aware of if we go down that path, that just because it's assigned to someone doesn't mean you can't stop checking to make sure that it's getting done.
And from a human nature perspective, the workflows like that tend to be fairly successful in a software project that is run by a company and people are assigned to do this as their day job. But having a machine randomly assign tasks to you when you're a collaborative volunteer, etc., on a project sometimes doesn't go over all that well. So there are definitely going to be people within the community who, I wouldn't say hostile, but would be disinclined to pay attention to any sort of auto assignment that they get. And certainly, like, I can say from experience that it's very easy to end up getting way too many notifications from Garrett. People just randomly add me to changes in many dozens of projects, and I cannot, without the aid of machine parsing, sort through those to figure out which ones are things I actually care about and which ones are things that people are just adding me to in dire hope of someone taking a look at their change. But yeah, before I call on you, I'm just going to say that part of the goal of this is that we want to find a middle ground that can help the people who are trying to contribute and can also help the maintainers. We definitely don't want to try to implement workflows that will overwhelm the project maintainers, because that's going to have the opposite of the desired result. And go
Yeah,
ahead.
so that's also a thing I wanted to talk about a bit. It's like, so when I submitted the patch, and then after some time I went to IoT, like, hey, what do I need to do now, because nothing is happening, and then someone said, oh, I'll pick it up. But it's kind of hard as a contributor to go weeks or whatever behind the day that he said, oh, I'll look at that, to go and like, did you look at it? It sounds a bit, yeah.
At some point, it feels like harassment.
Yes.
To keep following up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I feel your pain. I've been there many times myself. Yeah, it's, I don't know. That's the sort of thing that it would be good for people who are working on projects to be a little more conscious of, is and this was some feedback I had specifically for the Nova team when I was presenting the analyses that we had for them from Epoxy. Trying to set reasonable expectations.
Yes.
Volunteering to do too much and then not getting it done tends to leave an even worse taste in contributors' mouths than telling them up front that I'm sorry, I'm not going to have time to look at this.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I understand the Nova team is working on for this cycle. As part of that discussion is they're going to try to figure out how to scope down like how they're doing specs, for example. Like they realized as part of that discussion that yes, they were actually approving too many specs per cycle. And that was part of the problem was that then they had taken on more work than they had bandwidth to actually do. And that leads to specs getting approved, but then never actually getting implemented because the changes don't get reviewed and then they get kicked down the road to the next cycle. And for them to be able to say realistically, this is all we're going to be able to get to do for the next cycle is better for everyone overall. Just being upfront about the available throughput that they can sustain. Are we? So that sounds like we're maybe petering out a bit on feedback. Were there?
Well, and we've got like 3 minutes left, I think,
Oh.
this session time.
Well,
If
actually,
that
that-
clock is accurate.
Okay, that worked out really well then. Also,
It is.
It's a
3
30-minute
minutes.
session, right? So.
30 minutes, so yeah, 3 minutes.
Anybody else had anything they wanted to get in here? Also, this Etherpad, I'll follow up on the mailing list thread that we've got going on about this on OpenStack Discuss. If people want to provide further input on the mailing list thread, that's the best place to do it. But I'll include a link to some of this that we've done and a bit of a redux. And please try to take those surveys if you haven't already, and that way we can try to get your experiences incorporated into the feedback that we're getting to the teams for the next round of analyses.
So the action items on top of the survey, are they going to be transparent enough to let everyone know what are the actions planned based on the surveys so that people can understand, how their feedback is being adopted toward people?
Yes.
So what we did with the last cycle is we took, for the projects that had respondents, we distilled it down into some kind of more concrete and anonymized feedback. And then Jeremy has been going to each of those projects, typically through their meetings, and taking time with the project to sit down and bring that feedback back to the project and say, this is what people are saying about contributing. And so I guess the concrete action items so far have been to make sure that the teams are getting the feedback so they're aware of it.
A lot of those teams also, for those of you who plan to participate in the PTG in a couple of weeks, many of those teams who I talked to about the feedback are planning PTG sessions specifically around trying to improve these various aspects, or like trying to document things they're already doing that they can share with the rest of the community. So joining those PTG sessions, if you can, also a great way to help get involved in trying to turn some of this around.
I know that you showed up to a couple of them, but I added this topic and I'll link this Etherpad into the next Ops Radio Hour
Excellent.
thing so that we can discuss, so the operators that may not either
Is that next
not be contributing or have given up contributing,
Right.
and that.
Yes. I mean, a lot of the feedback that we got initially that kicked off this entire process came from operators who were also trying to participate in OpenStack, so that's a big help. And organizations that have been engaged in the operator community specifically. So the next operator hour, radio hour is next week, or is that?
October 31st, Halloween.
Yes, it is next week. So
1300 UTC.
Yep, I will have to figure out if I can hook my camera up and wear a costume.
Okay, well, thank you. I think we're at time. Thank you for the
Thank you
feedback.
very much for coming.
Please take the surveys.
So your talk
At the end of the break.
is,
the other side of that, like, we had a lot of people on, firms, the top is like,